Welcome to another edition of Play It Through, and this time around it's Batman, Return of the Joker, brought to us by Sunsoft. Now, of course, this is the sequel to the 1989 film Batman game that came out, and even though this one is really a lot different than that one, it is considered the sequel, and even so that when a third game came out, which was Batman Returns based on the Batman Returns movie, the Konami team, who ended up working on Batman Returns, actually named that one Batman 3 in some markets, including Europe and Japan. Now, this game, like I said, is a lot different from the first game, but still very good and shows why Sunsoft was a great developer of the 8-bit era. So let's get it going with Batman Return of the Joker, brought to us by Sunsoft. Now, just like a normal game, of course, I'm just going to go ahead and enter into the new game. Of course, you also can use a password, just go right ahead to the later parts of the game, but hey, really, what's the fun in just going ahead and skipping this great game? Now, you're going to notice right at the start that it's a lot different just even looking. Batman's a lot bigger, and all the character enemy sprites are a lot bigger as well from the original Batman game on the NES. And another thing about this game is you can see that the one thing I really don't like about it is the Batman's movements. He's very, very slow in this one. Now, considering how much I loved the movement and the jumping and all that was in the first Batman game on the NES, to see it like this and how slow he is and the fact that he doesn't have that awesome jumping ability is really a disappointment, but maybe better for Batman as a franchise to have it more realistic to this. Because, like I said before, there's jumping acrobatics that he was pulling off was much more of a Spider-Man characteristic than a Batman characteristic. Now, also with this game, another thing that can also be said bad about it is the fact that it doesn't have a whole lot of length to it, which is very, of course, unfortunate. And even though this one isn't based on a movie license, maybe they were rushed, I don't really know why. I mean, they put a lot of content in here, but it definitely, with these cool level designs. For example, like this one right here, of course, the giant blimp is following you, throwing bombs at you, while you're dealing with the enemies, while you're jumping over platforms, trying not to fall in holes. Which is a very cool thing, a very cool element. As well as you have later on in the game, we'll have to deal with a tank following us around, firing at us while we're doing basically the same thing. There's also a moving train level later in the game, so there is a lot of different gameplay elements, more so than maybe the first one in terms of just the level being trying to get you, instead of just you trying to get through the level, if that made any sense. Like in the first one, the level's already nicely designed and you have to worry about how you're going to make the next jump. While this one, in a lot of the places, has the level trying to get you with scrolling style levels and stuff like that, more so than you trying to just figure out where you have to go to next. You know where you have to go to next during this. You have to keep going and moving and not falling down the holes while trying to avoid the enemies. Another thing, of course, completely different from the first Batman game is the power-up system. Now, in the first one, we had a multiple choice of weapons. We had 3 weapons to deal with, and we'd switch them, randomly to do more damage to certain bosses and certain other enemies. Now here we go with the actual first boss battle, and I have, unfortunately, I don't really like the weapon I have going into this battle, but it doesn't really matter. This one really just becomes a shoot fest. Now he fires straight up in the line diagonally, as you've seen, and he also fires straight at me. So, most of the time it just comes down to him being really, really stupid and not attacking me. And I just keep standing there and pelting him as quickly as I can possibly press the buttons in order to end up killing him. Now, of course, if you have a turbo button, you can use that and do a lot more damage to him even quicker, but I figured I'd just take the time and keep mashing the button until my finger gets extremely sore, just for the sake of whatever, because it really isn't a necessity to use the turbo button on this game. And as you see, though, the really weird thing, though, is just the health meters. The fact that I have, no matter how much health I had going into the battle, I automatically get, the 80,000 health. And then my boss opponent, whoever my enemy is, gets a different amount of health depending upon what boss it is. Later levels, of course, the bosses have more health than, of course, at the beginning. So here we go with level 2, which ends up not having a boss battle, but it adds another cool element to the gameplay, which is in the second half of this level we'll get to when we get over to that point. As the game scrolls here, it's kind of weird though, because you saw how it scrolled there to get to the next part of the level. Well, later on it's just going to fade out when I get to the end. So it really would have been cool if they could have just made it all just one giant scroll, for each level, because you're going to see when I get up to the end when I make this jump here, it actually fades out and continues the level. I'm still in stage 2-1, but it didn't do the scrolling, which, you know, would have been actually pretty neat to have been able to make it one solid level, but for whatever reason they decided not to do that. Now here we go with stage 2-2, and in this level, you can see that it's a scrolling shooter. Batman has like his bat jet going here, and his, you know, his bat jetpack, and basically I have my weapon that I've been using, which I really like the weapon, when it's a big shot straight, and then explodes into a spread shot, and it's very useful against hitting enemies on the top and bottom at the same time during the course of this level. Basically though, it's just like any other scrolling shooter, but the only thing really that's a little bit of a pain is because Batman's sprite is so big that you have to move, and he moves pretty slow, that it's a little bit hard to dodge some of them, but it's very, very basic in terms of what the scrolling shooter would even involve, so it's really not that difficult to be able to take care of the enemies and not take too much damage. Now that was the end of it already. As soon as it began, it was already over, and that's going to clear stage number 2, and it's going to go into stage 3-1, which is a very weird thing, just the fact that we're in like a snow-filled place, and we actually have like Japanese-style enemies, like those classic, you know, they look like they're wearing like a kimono type thing, and they're throwing tornadoes at me. It's just like a classic Japanese-looking enemy. I don't know, really, I thought we were still in, you know, wherever. I thought we were in Gotham, maybe not. I really don't know where Joker is. But all I know is I'm trying to walk through the snow, and I'm sliding and slipping all over the ice. Of course, you know, adding that to the gameplay is fun. But since the platforms really aren't that hard to jump through, at least they didn't. You know, this game is much much easier than the first Batman game. I mean, far easier, and much easier than most Sunsoft titles. Sunsoft, I thought, always had the mentality of, we're going to give a small game, a shorter game, but it's going to be really difficult to deal with. While this one is a pretty short game, but it's much easier than its predecessor. I'm just going to wait for rocks to fall so they don't drop on my head and move over the platform. This platform is a little bit of a pain because you have to like kind of walk onto it if you want to try to even have an even shot at taking out that enemy across the way. Because if you jump at him, he just sometimes will end up hitting you, and you will sometimes fall backwards right down the pit. So you have to be careful about that one particular jump. Take out that enemy and go underneath this, kind of like Mario 1 here, dodging the fireballs. Move over and jump over the gap, and made it to the end there. So now we have another great gameplay element of like the stage trying to get me instead of me trying to figure out where to go in the stage, with the ceiling kind of collapsing on me like a classic platforming style thing that we've seen in many games, including Castlevania and Mario. As well as these very weird green spiders. I don't really know why there's radioactive green spiders, but just another thing for me to deal with here. As here's stage 3-3, and it's the second boss battle, which is a really lame boss. He has the same health as me. We both have 80,000 health, but it's extremely lame, because all he does is fly back and forth between the left and right side of the screen, and every time he lands, he ends up doing the same shot, which you can see does a lot of damage. So you think that's going to come down to, well, can I kill him before he ends up killing me? But there is a strategy to it, which at first I'm not really going to deal with the strategy. I'm just going to keep firing, because there really is no need to dodge it. I'll just take the damage when if I need it. But what I found out for the strategy is, if you walk into him, he only does a little bit of damage. As you saw, he only did, like 2,000 damage to me when I walked into him. And when you if you time it correctly, when you walk into him, you're still flashing when he fires the shot. So you end up being able to dodge the entire length of the shot. Now, I'm sure there's probably another strategy to that guy, but I've always found that just works the best for me, so I just go ahead and end up doing that. Now here we go with stage 4, and this is the beginning of the scrolling train level. Same always reminds me, any kind of train level reminds me, I think, of Ninja Gaiden, but also, Bad Dudes had a scrolling train level. Now, what you just saw is I've been slowly building up that power meter, and when it gets all the way up, I get like this, Batman goes into like the hyper mode or something, and just has this unlimited shot coming out of him. And it only lasts for as long as you can keep picking up little power-ups, and in this level, which is usually the level I end up picking up the bonus and getting that hyper mode, there isn't enough enemies to sustain me, so I only last a few seconds in that hyper mode, and I'm probably not going to even get up to that mode again during the course of the playthrough. I don't, it's kind of a cool thing, I guess, but unnecessary and really just weird for Batman to just all of a sudden get like really kicked off and go, all hyper mode and stuff. I really don't get it. Unfortunately, I grabbed that other weapon that I had at the start of the game that I had the first boss, that I fought the first boss with. I really don't like that weapon at all. So, there we go. I got my weapon back, so now I'm happy. Destroy this crate, and continue on. That's the end of the train level, as I just have to wait for the level to end and fade out. Here we go, 4-2.